years ago, this dude was practically living on the street.
Paris.
Yeah, in Paris. No, actually, he was living on the street.
Defending undisputed.
Oh, he got high because it's
That's it. Heavyweight champion of the world, Francis Ngannou.
From sand mines to greatness, this is the story of Francis Ngannou. At one point in his life, Francis Ngannou was working at a sand mine for less than $1 a day. Today, he is a multi-millionaire who not only changes facial symmetry of some of the toughest dudes on the planet, but has also humbled the powers that be. The question is, how did he go from broke to the UFC heavyweight champion to battling the best heavyweight boxers on the planet with the odds heavily stacked against him? Before the big man enters the ring to face Anthony Joshua in a clash of titans in March, let's recap his cinematic rise in the world of combat. Francis Ngannou's journey started in a small village in Cameroon, where he found himself on the breadline throughout his childhood. To make a living, he took on demanding jobs like working at a sand mine to make money that was only enough for 2 meals a day.
I was about 10 years old when I started that, because I was in the village, even though that work was meant for adults, but we didn't have any option, so we take what we had at the time.
The job was hectic, but what made it even worse, it was a major hurdle en route to his dream, which was to become a successful boxer like his idol, Mike Tyson.
The biggest problem. Oh, right hand, down goes. But right now, Mike Tyson is in.
He got tired of living a miserable life by his standards, and Ngannou made a life-changing decision at 26 years old. He decided to seek a better future in Europe. But in order to achieve his goals, he first had to go through hell. Ngannou spent months in the Western Sahara Desert without food. He only had water from a well that had dead animals in it. After months of struggle, he finally managed to enter Morocco, from where he was supposed to go to Spain, but his attempts to cross into the European country were foiled. 4 times he was arrested and sent back to the desert, meaning that he had to start all over again. But even then, he refused to back down.
What kept you going when you'd failed 2, 3, 4 times?
The dream, the motivation. There was nothing to go back to.
After what seemed like a gazillion failed attempts, Ngannou finally made it to Spain and then to Paris, where his wheels of fortune remained jammed since he spent months on the streets of Paris before the MMA gods blessed him. They sent a messiah in the form of Didier Carmont, a close friend of Fernand Lopez, the head coach of the MMA Factory. Realizing that Ngannou had that touch of death, Lopez told him to forget about boxing and take up MMA. This was in 2013. The Cameroonian made a blistering start to his MMA career by smashing his opponents with some solid strikes, finishing arm bars in less than 2 minutes. It was a successful start to his career, but then Ngannou suffered his first pro loss, but he came back strong with a killer knockout against Bilal Tahitani. On that same night, Ngannou went up against Nico Speck, who refused to stand and trade with the serial power puncher. Ngannou was more than ready for a ground duel as well. In less than half a round, Ngannou muscled his way to a win, choking his opponent out with an arm triangle. A few months later, Ngannou fought in Switzerland, where he rocked his opponent with the first few strikes. The Predator's opponent panic wrestled but found himself trapped in a guillotine, Ngannou's grip was tight and he finished the fight with just 44 seconds. In his last fight right before joining the UFC, Ngannou used his raw strength to full effect. He took his opponent down and sealed the deal with ground and pound for a TKO. Then, the UFC took notice of his dominance and they signed Ngannou to the UFC. He faced Luis Enrique in his UFC debut. Francis started off strong with some punishing leg kicks, but Luis managed to catch one and he took the fight to the ground. Even with the one takedown, Enrique couldn't land any significant hits. The referee decided to restart their action. Halfway through the second round, Ngannou unleashed a powerful left uppercut to send his opponent packing.
It's all over! Wow.
In his second UFC bout, Ngannou took on wrestling ace Curtis Blades, who went for a takedown early, but Ngannou kept the fight standing, pushing his opponent against the cage before rocking him with a left hook halfway through round one. The second round saw Blades throwing wild punches, leaving openings for Ngannou's kicks. 2 minutes in, Blades managed another takedown, but Ngannou rose to his feet comfortably and landed a few more shots. Blades' right eye was almost swollen shut from Ngannou's punches at the end of the round too. The ringside doctor decided to stop the fight. Following his win over Curtis Blades, Ngannou continued to tear through the UFC heavyweight division and even worked his way all the way up to the former champion Andrei Arlovski. Francis came out guns blazing with heavy punches that missed their mark as Andre concentrated on targeting Ngannou's lead leg with low kicks. After a brief struggle, Ngannou found the mark with a perfectly timed counter left followed by a monstrous right that tamed the pit bull. The Predator followed up with vicious ground and pound, and a few seconds later, the fight was over. After hunting a legend, Francis produced one of the scariest moments in UFC history against the OG Alistair Overeem. But even he was scared to stand and bang with the guy who hits like a Ford Escort. As soon as the fight started, Overeem changed forward with a punch and went for a takedown, but Ngannou defended it and then fought Reem in the clinch. After separation, both fighters swung for the fences, with Francis unleashing a devastating uppercut that sent Overeem to the land of Ghost. After 6 wins in a row, Ngannou challenged the legend, Stipe, for the heavyweight title at UFC 220, where he was beaten comprehensively. A few months later, he dropped another one to Derek Lewis, but just when you thought the hype was over, Francis made a comeback for the ages. In November 2018, he had a rematch against Curtis Blades, who was rocked with a powerful right hand 30 seconds into the fight and finished on the follow-up in only 45 seconds.
Oh, this is bad news!
That's it! Francis Ngannou!
A few months later, Francis faced the former 2-time heavyweight champion and one of the heavyweight GOATs, Cain Velasquez, who Ngannou folded so awkwardly with a tight shot that he ended up damaging his knee just 25 seconds in, resulting in a TKO win for the Predator. A few months later, Francis locked horns with another former champ, Junior Dos Santos. The fight kicked off with both fighters gauging each other's moves and trading shots here and there, but it didn't take much time for Ngannou to display his hulkish power. Halfway through minute 1, the Cameroonian landed a strong right, hand square on Dos Santos' temple that caused him to stagger backwards. Smelling blood, the Predator followed up with an avalanche of strikes, and that was that. After a victory like that, Ngannou insisted on a title shot, and that's exactly what he got. With 4 wins in a row, Ngannou got his second shot at the champion Stipe, and this time around, he did not disappoint. Unlike the first fight between the two, Ngannou successfully defended against Stipe's takedowns and dominated him in the first round, where he almost stopped the champ a couple of times. In the second round, Francis ultimately sealed the deal with a straight left hand, leaving Stipe folded like a lawn chair to win the UFC heavyweight title. From a poverty-stricken life to UFC heavyweight glory, Ngannou's dream was now a reality. But despite being the biggest star at heavyweight, Francis felt like he was underpaid. He wanted a bigger piece of the pie, plus a chance to compete in his long life dream, boxing. Dana White didn't agree, and that's when things turned sour between the two. Nevertheless, Francis still put his title on the line against Ciryl Gane at UFC 270, where he was dominating in the striking range in rounds 1 and 2, but came back in round 3, 4, and 5, out wrestling the Frenchman and winning by a decision. Ngannou's first title defense was followed by lengthy negotiations for a potential fight against John Jones. That would have been an absolutely insane fight. But the parties involved failed to reach a deal despite Dana White reportedly offering Francis a whopping $8 million to fight Bones. The money, plus other incentives, were simply not enough for Ngannou, and he decided to part ways with the UFC in January of 2023. Many said he fumbled the bag and that he made a massive mistake by leaving the UFC at the peak of his powers, but Francis was firm in his decision. In May of 2023, Francis signed with the PFL, and a few months later, he announced a blockbuster boxing match with Tyson Fury in October.
The Battle of the Baddest this Saturday night to begin this year's iconic...
If the booking itself wasn't a slap on the faces of the Cameroonians' critics, his performance certainly was. Despite having far less experience than the top heavyweight boxer on the planet, Ngannou went toe-to-toe and blow for blow with Tyson Fury. He tagged him time and again and even dropped him once with a crushing left hook in round 3. It was a close fight, with many believing that Ngannou was robbed of a win, which was awarded to the Brit by a split decision.
From the United Kingdom, the WBC heavyweight.
But the fact that he gave a world champion boxer, the best heavyweight boxer on the planet right now, he gave him a run for his money, that was a moral victory in itself. Oh, and he also made $10 million that night, which is 20 times more than what he bagged in his final UFC fight. That is absolutely insane. $10 million. The next time Francis Ngannou steps inside the ring, standing across from him will be the British phenom Anthony Joshua, who's coming off a perfect 2023 with 3 out of 3 wins. Francis will reportedly bag another $10 million or more versus Joshua, and if he manages to win, well, who knows what will happen. Will Francis Ngannou win a boxing world champion before it's all said and done? I guess we will find out. Just think about that real quick. Ngannou can be the first person to ever walk this earth to be a champion, not only in the UFC, but also in boxing. I mean, how crazy does that sound? Does he have what it takes? I think he already proved that. But let me know what you think in the comments. If you liked the video, please subscribe. I cover all things MMA, and I also talk about my jiu-jitsu journey. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one.